Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with a very special episode of Cheap Shots. Now typically Cheap Shots is a series where we show you how to save money on the miniatures wargaming hobby, and on today's episode it's a little bit different. And the reason why is because this video is actually given to me as a challenge by one of my viewers. His name is Margartha Pi. If you haven't got a chance, you should check out his channel. He's got 2 subscribers right now. He's got a really hilarious lore video about Elder Scrolls for the video games, which is absolutely hilarious. I thought it was absolutely funny when I saw that video. But if you get a chance, check out his channel. And Margartha Pi actually gave me a challenge. He noticed that another big YouTuber on our community named Squidmar Miniatures did what's called a $50 challenge. He wanted to know what he could actually put together with some miniatures and some paints and some base work to actually get into the miniatures wargaming hobby, especially with Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and how far you can get with $50. So Margartha Pi actually showed me that video. He actually linked me the video and told me to watch it, and he said it'd be really interesting to see exactly what I could do with $50 if I had to do that challenge, and to do one for Necromunda or for Warhammer. So actually, it inspired me to do several videos using this $50 challenge. I plan on doing one for right now for Necromunda. I also plan on doing another one for Warhammer Fantasy / Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I'm also thinking about doing one for Mordheim and all kinds of different things as well, doing these little $50 challenges. And the reason why $50, and you might be wondering why $50, Commander Cheapskate. Well, as Squidmar Miniatures said it best, in his video he said that $50 is usually the average cost of going on a night out to the movies, if you're going with friends, for popcorn and snacks and the main features and things. That's around $50 for that. Or the same amount of price you'd pay at a nice restaurant of some sort, kind of like a chain restaurant like a Chili's or something like that. You pay that for drinks, your hors d'oeuvres, and your meals in that situation. Or going out for just a night of drinking with your friends out to the pub or to the bar or to the club. Even though I feel though if you go clubbing, you're going to definitely pay more than $50 if you decide to do that. But these are things that average everyday people usually spend for entertainment. Usually they just do it like once or twice a month, and they spend this amount of money to do so. So I thought, what if you took that same amount of money, which is $50 in the United States, and actually tried to get into a miniatures war game with it? What could you possibly get in return, and how could you, get involved in the hobby? So with that $50 challenge in mind, this is what the end result's going to look like. This is actually an Ash Waste Nomad gang, complete with Dustback Helmets that you could actually get into for less than $50. It's actually going to be $49.73 to be exact. So for $49.73, you can have a fully completed gang with Dustback Helmets that you could actually use in your games of Necromunda Ash Waste. And if you want to, I'm going to show you some really cheap ways to actually expand this gang by actually adding some brutes, and that's only going to cost you $2.50 in order to do that. So if you want to go a little bit further than $50, you're not going to go very much further than $3 beyond that, if you really wanted to as well. But this is what the core game's gonna look like, and this is gonna cost you $49.73. So that being said, let's get this $50 challenge on a roll and show you guys exactly what you can put together with $50. Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about first is materials that you can get for absolutely for free. And one of these things you could definitely get for free are water and sand. Water, more than likely, you're getting right out of the tap. You'll use it to wash your brushes, also to thin down your glue to make a sealant for your bases as well. Same thing with the sand. The sand's going to be used exactly for the same reason, in order to create texturing for your miniatures bases on this part. The entire planet is pretty much made of dirt, so you can get this from your backyard. I get my sand from my backyard, is what I literally do. I just take a couple of scoops out of the ground, put inside of plastic containers. I nuke it for about 2 minutes to kill any bugs or anything else that might be inside of it, and I use that to do all my base work. And as you can see, I got just some water in the tap there to do my water sealant for my miniatures. So it's really, really simple. These are things you got probably have lying around the house. You can just get these materials, assemble real quick, and then use them for your miniatures wargaming hobby. Another thing that you could also use, or is probably got lying around the house, is glue. You probably have glue of some sort lying around your house. Optimally, it would like to be best to use wood glue if you happen to have that lying around the house, but if not, PVA glue, which is your typical white Elmer's glue, would be perfectly fine as well. In this situation here, I do have a bottle of Gorilla Wood Glue that I have for free. Now you might be wondering, well, Commander Cheapskate, isn't Gorilla Wood Glue kind of expensive? Normally it would be, but I got this bottle of wood glue at my sister's house when she was moving. My sister was doing a garage sale, selling off all of her stuff that she couldn't take with her because they're chemical based, like propane and things of that nature. And she had a little thing full of chemicals that she needed to give away for free, and in that was wood glue. And she gave it to me for helping her set up that garage sale. You could evenly find this stuff in garage sales all over the country as well, because people usually have to move and they can't take adhesives with them as part of their moving agreement with their contractor. So in that case, you could probably get wood glue for pretty free if you had to as well. So if not, though, you could probably get this stuff pretty cheap. You can get like tubes of this stuff for less than $1 at your local Dollar Tree if necessary. Now let's talk about the things that's going to cost you some money, and those things are going to be your tools. So I suggest you do a couple of things. Either one, get a set of nail clippers, kind of like the way you see right down the bottom of the page there, or get a side cutter if you can, and a box cutter from your local Dollar Tree. In this situation, I put all these tools out to show which you could use. I usually typically don't use the box cutter myself though. I usually don't scrape away mold lines, and the reason why that is the case is because I have horrible luck with sharp edge objects. So using knives is not exactly my forte. When it comes to trimming down my miniatures, I usually use a pair of side cutters as well as a set of cheap nail clippers in order to do all my trim work for me, just because I don't feel comfortable messing around with sharp objects. People in my personal life who know me for real know exactly how horrible I am with these sharp objects, so that is why I highly suggest you don't use a box cutter. Just use a pair of side clippers as well as nail clippers. I got both these for less than $1 at my local Dollar Tree, and you can definitely use that to cut things out of your sprues. Now, I will warn you, one of the most expensive pieces of kit that you'll need in order to participate in the hobby is to buy paintbrushes. In this case, as you can see, I have a 5-pack of paintbrushes. They're a sorted pack of size 10, size 3, size 5, size 1, as well as size 0, and I get this at my local Hobby Lobby for $4.99. Now, these are just typical synthetic brushes. Now, I know a lot of people will bemoan the fact that these are not high quality brushes to paint your miniatures with, but just to give you guys a little FYI, these are the paintbrushes I use to paint my miniatures with. And even though I may not be winning any golden demon rewards, I'm not exactly a professional or competitive painter. I'm just painting up my miniatures to make them look decent enough to play on the battlefield, and the only audience they're for is for myself as well as for my friends who play. So, and not to blow my own, not to toot my own horn, but I'm actually pretty good at painting. Actually, I think I do a pretty fair job for a person who's not a professional, and you know, these are the cheap materials I use in order to do so. I also use extremely cheap craft paint from Walmart as well as Hobby Lobby to do exactly the same job as the pros, and the reason why is because, like I said, I'm not a professional painter. I'm just slapping on some paint on some miniatures to get them painted up, and that's all you really need to have. So now that we're done with the materials, let's talk about the miniatures you're going to use. In this case, I purchased some secondhand sprue from my local game store, and with 13 32mm brown bases for about 20 bucks. And the reason why is that going to your local game store is actually the best way to get cheap miniatures for you to build your gang with. And the reason why is because there's a lot of players out there who usually get out of games, who usually fall out of games for whatever reasons, or maybe they're not interested in playing a gang anymore. And so because they're looking a way to sell their miniatures, and that way they can offload the cost of that and use the money from that to buy a new gang. Now, because these are secondhand, you could actually get them for a really good cost. I'm not talking about for half off either. I'm talking about anywhere between 10 to 25% at the most. Maybe 30% if the guy you're buying from really wants to play hardball. But for the most part, though, you're usually paying them for about anywhere between 10 to 25% of what they're actually worth. And the reason why is because right off the bat, if they're used miniatures, they're already worth half as much right off the bat. If they're painted very poorly or not very well assembled, even more so. In this situation, I was actually buying some leftover sprue from a guy who had some cast-off pieces that he had. He was actually getting out of Warhammer 40k. He had some leftover sprue from that game. He had some Adeptus Mechanicus sprue. He had some Genestealer Cult sprue, and he also had some Imperial Guard sprue. And he also had like a couple of bags for 32mm bases that he was wanting to get rid of. They were kind of stinged up and dinged up, so because I was able to get those for a song, and same thing with these sheets of sprue. In the end here, I managed to get 4 sheets of sprue. 2 of them belonged to Adeptus Mechanicus. 1 of them was from Imperial Guard. I believe it was a command group, I believe is what that was from. And then 1 was another sort of close combat weapons from Genestealer Cults. And I was able to get that for 20 bucks even for all of it. I was able to negotiate for pretty much, and the reason why is because of these sprues were already used. For one, a lot of the stuff that was on them were missing, and unfortunately, not to be mean to the guy I bought this from, he wasn't really paying attention to what he had on hand anyways. He just knew he had a stack of stuff he wanted to get rid of, and so he didn't realize he actually had quite a bit of torsos and legs still left on his sprue pieces, so I was able to get them for a really cheap price at $20. And that was good for the main core of my gang. Now, you know, I'd be thinking, well, Commander Cheapskate, Adeptus Mechanicus, that's Warhammer 40k. I thought you were actually making a Ash Waste Nomad gang. And the answer is yes, you're absolutely right. You can use Adeptus Mechanicus to make an Ash Waste Nomad gang, and the reason why I know this for a fact is because the similarities involved with both groups. Both groups wear very long coats. Both groups have really long rifles. Both groups have glowing elements on them. Both groups have cybernetics. Both of them have this really inhuman kind of look with tubes and wires coming off of them. So if you ask me, Adeptus Mechanicus as well as Ash Waste Nomads, if not sharing a same Ash ancestry, are very, very closely similar. And like I said, I'm not cheapskate, so I don't care about proxying, and neither should you. So now that we have our miniatures, the next thing we need to do, of course, is to purchase our Dustback Helmets. Now, you could, of course, buy a Dustback Helmet box set from Games Workshop. That is perfectly fine. Those miniatures are beautiful, and they look really awesome as well. But remember, like I said, we're trying to do a $50 challenge here, so we're going to keep it cheap. As you can see in this picture here, I have 2 sets of toys from my local Dollar Tree. They're from a toy line called Final Faction, and it's a science fiction game, and these creatures are from the faction known as Karn, which is the alien invaders that are attacking Earth in this game series. These are what are known as perimeter defense crawlers, alright? And the best thing about these things, these packs cost $1.25 a piece, and the really best part about these packs, besides the price, is that you get 2 of these little insect monsters per pack for $1.25 a piece. That is absolutely fantastic, and that's the reason why I decided you get 2 of these things. So you're going to spend $2.50 to get 4 of these bug-looking creatures, and you're going to use that to make the Dustback Helmets for your gang. So now that we have our sprues assembled for ourselves, we also have our miniatures for our bugs. Next thing we need to do now is to assemble all these miniatures together. And this is exactly what these miniatures will look like when fully assembled. As you can see, I have a nice little mixture of some AdMech guys with some Imperial Guardsman arms and some Genestealer Cult arms as well. I got 3 Dustback Helmets. I got 1 guy that could be a Dustback Helmet or could be the champion, what is known as the Watcher. I also have a leader as well as 2 champions. I also have 2 2 Dust Runners, which are juvie level characters, and then 3 gangers with long rifles. And so because of that, by assembling this group together, you have the full core of your gang with Dustback Helmets also added up as well. So once your miniatures are fully assembled, the next thing you need to do, of course, is to base the miniatures. Alright, so the best way to base your miniatures is by using the sand that we use from our backyards. All you're going to do is take some wood glue, going to glue down a layer of glue on top of the bases of your miniatures, and you're going to sprinkle them with some of the dust of the sand that you got from your backyard. This is going to create the texture, and you're going to let it alone to let it dry. Once it dries, what you're going to do is you're going to take another load of wood glue as well as water and mix it together. You're going to make about a 50-50 mix of water as well as wood glue, so that way the wood glue has about the consistency of milk. And then once you do that, you're going to brush this mixture all over the top of your bases, and what that's going to do is going to dry, and it's going to create a sealant for the texturing on your bases, and just like that, you now have sandy bases for all of your miniatures. Once you let that stuff dry, the next thing you do, of course, is a prime. Alright, so the next thing you do, of course, is to prime your miniatures. In this case, I usually like to use flat black spray paint from my local Lowe's hardware store. It's going to cost 99 cents in order to use this stuff. Yes, it's not primered in the traditional sense, but it actually does a good job because black spray paint adheres nicely to plastic. It also gives you rough, uneven texture to paint your miniatures on. Now, you typically hear about the argument about why do you prime miniatures, and the reason why you prime miniatures is for a couple reasons. One, when you prime miniatures, it actually creates an uneven surface for your paint to adhere to. If you were to paint your acrylic paint onto bare plastic, there's not enough surface tension to keep the acrylic paint on there, and it could just rub off your miniature with the slightest amount of pressure, and that'll ruin the finish on your miniature. By spraying it with primer, microscopically speaking, has a more porous surface, which allows the acrylic paint to adhere to it easier and allow it to dry on there and actually create a solid coat, which is really nice. The second reason why you want to use primer is because primer usually has a lot to do with the undercoat and the overall color scheme for your miniatures. And this, traditionally speaking, the darker the primer, the darker the color scheme is going to be, the lighter the primer, the lighter the color scheme. Now in this situation, I chose black, and the reason why is because I'm going to be doing a lot of dry brushing on these miniatures in order to build up that ashy, dusty wasteland look with these guys, and then we're going to do some glazing with some paints on top of that to create this look of this kind of nasty, dirty, stained up look for these miniatures, because these are ash waste nomads and they're not exactly the cleanest sort of guys. Now as for the whole painting process, I'm actually not going to break that down into detail all that much. I'm just going to give a swift overview of the type of paints that I used, and the reason why is because I'm actually going to do a cheap shot video showing you how to specifically paint these guys up, and it's going to cost you $19 and I believe $19.25, I believe is what it's going to cost you in order to paint these guys up. So like I said, most of your money for this paint job is actually going to, for this gang, is going for the miniatures that you're using as well as for the paints. So that being said, let's go ahead and just do a quick overview of the paints. So like I said before earlier in the video, I like to use cheap acrylic half paint. All the paints that you're going to see here that I'm using in these following pictures, I got from my local Walmart and my local Hobby Lobby. And when you add all the costs together, they usually cost about $19.25. And the reason why is because cheap craft paint is exactly what it sounds like. It's cheap craft paint. Now I know a lot of people will say, well, Commander Cheapskate, what about Army Painter? What about Vallejo? What about Viejo? What about Games Workshop Citadel line of paints? Those paints are excellent. They do exactly as advertised, and they are beautiful paints as well. They have some vibrant colors with those, and they have some really neat effects that you can pull with them. They're really awesome. The only problem is that they're extremely expensive. They're so expensive, it's not even funny. Now with the new speed paints and contrast paints everyone's coming out with, which is, by the way, nothing more than just ink mixed with contrast medium, that's going to be extremely expensive now as well. These things range anywhere from $4.50 for these really small milliliters worth of fluid, all the way up to $7.80, $10 in some cases. So they're extremely expensive, which is why I advocate the use of really cheap craft paints like Anita's acrylic, like Delta Cerakote. Those usually cost you about 65 cents at your local Hobby Lobby. Folk art costs usually about 75 cents at your local Walmart or Hobby Lobby for that matter. Apple Barrel paint costs 50 cents at your local Walmart. Now you might be thinking, well, Commander Cheapskate, these are kind of thin paints. I mean, they don't have as much good coverage or as much strong as a pigment as the other expensive name brand paints. Okay, yeah, maybe not, but they're also like a tenth of the cost too, and that's the reason why it's kind of nice. I know people will be like, well, Commander Cheapskate, you can't put as many, you have to put 2 layers to get the same result with the other name brand paints. And yes, that is true, but you're gonna put 2 coats of paint for that name brand paint too. Anyways, you should always put 2 thin coats, like our man Duncan Rhodes says. So it doesn't really matter in the end because you're still going to get the same amount of color look anyways when you get done with it. And since we're going to do an oil wash on top of these things with dry brushing anyways, it's not really going to matter all that much. The differences between the products is so minute, only professionals really catch it, to be perfectly honest. And I know professionals like to use the more expensive paint, but that's because they're professionals. Guys like Vince Venturilla, for example, they paint for competition, so they can use whatever they want because they're going to use the tool that best suits them for their needs. And in some situations, they'll use expensive paint. Sometimes they use cheaper paint. It just depends on what they need, their tools in their toolbox. But for everyday consumers like you and I, using cheap craft paints is a great way to save a lot of money and still get a really good result for your miniatures, especially if you paint them up to play on the battlefield. Anyone who's ever watched my channel for a while now knows that my miniatures are pretty awesome looking. Yeah, maybe they won't be winning any Golden Demon Awards or painting competitions, but for just playing on a tabletop with your friends, they're pretty dang good. So I'm not too worried about that too much. And as you can see, these are the materials I'm using in order to paint out my miniatures. They're very cheap, they're very inexpensive, they're readily available. They come into the vast variety of different colors. Almost all colors of the rainbow that you could possibly think of, and you'll probably find something that'll meet whatever needs you need it for your paint schemes for your miniatures. And at the same time, all these paints you've seen in this segment only cost $19.25, less than 20 bucks. You're probably going to spend more buying lunch from like a McAllister's Deli or from a Panera Bread than you are going to spend on the paints to paint up this entire gang. Alright, so here is the end result of our $50 Necromunda challenge. And this is all thanks to my viewer Margartha Pie for actually giving me the inspiration to actually pursue this challenge. So thank you Margartha Pie for showing me that beautifully well shot Squidward video, as well as the $50 challenge that he did in order to do Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So you can see, as everyone can see, this is our end result for our $50 challenge. As you can see, we have a fully fleshed out gang that we can now use in our games on Necromunda Ash Wastes. And of course, you'll be playing Ash Waste Nomads. So just to give you guys a quick rundown how the game would work. First of all, we have our leader. After that, we also have 2 champions with special weapons. We have 2 dust runners, which are basically juvie level fighters with blast rifles. We have 3 dust runners, which are the guys who ride the Dustback Helmets, 1 guy with a special weapon on their back, as well as 2 normal guys. We have a 3rd champion option, which is the Watcher, which is the guy that can change the weather on the battlefield. And we have 3 Ash Waste Nomad Warriors with long rifles as well. And then finally we have this guy here on the bottom who could be used as another fighter, probably a ganger or something of that nature as well. Actually, at the time of the video that I was actually making this, I decided to just kind of add some more expansions to this. So for another $1.25, I'm sorry, $2.50, if you wanted to, you could actually get 2 more dollar store toys, as you can see right over here in the top. Those are going to be our Athromite Dune Scuttlers. You're allowed 2 of these in a gang of Ash Waste Nomads for their brute. And what I'll do is I'll make this guy the Athromite Handler for that, and then of course have our 2 beautiful looking brutes, these Athromite Dune Scuttlers that will be the brutes for this gang. So if you want to go a little bit further than that, after you get done painting this, after you get done with your initial investment of $49.73 for your gang, as well as the Dust Riders in the back, as well as a champion, you can cough up another $2.50 for some brutes that you can add to your gangs as well, if you're so inclined. So yeah, just to show you guys what can happen if you decide, let me focus there real fast. Go ahead and show you guys exactly what can happen if you decide to actually just, buy some used sprues from your local game store. Always ask around your local game stores. I'm sure there's always players or looking to offload some cheap sprue that they don't have, they don't ever use. They just kind of have it laying around. I was able to get all of mine for about 20 bucks even, which is absolutely fantastic because I was doing the guy a favor by getting rid of stuff he didn't want anymore. And with that leftover Adeptus Mechanicus sprue, I made most of these gang members, as well as with some arms from some Gene Stealer cultists, as well as some Imperial Guardsmen. Was able to make these guys. And I know what people are going to say. People are going to say, Commander Cheapskate, though, those are just Adeptus Mechanicus fighters. That's all they are. Well, yeah, that's true. But you know what? Also, Ashways, Nomads, Adeptus Mechanicus have a lot in common. They both wear long coats. They both use long rifles. They both have cybernetics and strange eldritch energy for their gear. They're both very mysterious. The similarities between them is endless. And that's exactly what I decided to go with when I decided to go with this gang. So there you guys have it. This is what the end result will look like of your guys' Necromunda $50 challenge. So if you're thinking about getting into Necromunda, especially Necromunda Ash Waste, and you're willing to pay just the initial entry cost of $50 to do it, this is not a bad way to start it. So once again, you guys, I do like to thank the members to MacArthur Pie. He's one of my subscribers who actually recommended this challenge to me. So thank you, MacArthur Pie. If you're watching this, this video is due to you and your recommendation. So thank you very much. And for anybody else who's looking for a cheap way to get into Necromunda, now you know how to do so. And it's about the cost of a nice dinner, or going out to the movies, or a night on the clubs, or the bar. In fact, actually, you might spend more money at the club than you actually would ever spend it on this. Just goes to show what happens with some ingenuity, some wood glue, some sand, some cheap craft paint, as well as a trip to your local Dollar Tree can actually do for you. Alright, you guys, so that's going to do it for this one. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is valuable to us as always. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good to do this with you guys. I'll catch you guys next one. Peace out. Stay classy.